All, let us start with the topic that we were discussing in the last class. In the last class, we have finished with control and coordination, or we were almost towards the end of that. And let us continue with that topic itself. We were discussing on the we have completed the human nervous system. Now let us jump over to the next topic, that is control and coordination in plants. Now, what is happening in control and coordination in plants is majority of the plant parts are controlled by uh, plant hormones. There are 5 non-plant hormones. They are auxins, gibberellins, cytokinins, abscisic acid, and ethylene. Out of this, the first 3, which are auxins, gibberellins, and cytokinins, are called as growth promoters. Why? Because they are essential for um, promoting growth, or when the plant is growing actively, then these chemicals are produced in the plant. Whereas in abscisic acid and ethylene, they are growth retarders. They are produced in the later part of the life, or what we call as the senescence. Senescence means the aging of the plant, which is also another part of life itself, another part of the plant itself. So during that part, the chemicals required are abscisic acid and ethylene. Auxins normally help the plant in cell division. We always say auxins, gibberellins, cytokinins. Why? Because they are not one chemical, they are a group of chemicals. There are many chemicals which show similar function like that of auxins. Any of these chemicals will have the same effect on the plant cells. Their major effect is cell division. I can give you another example from another field where we have studied about root nodules. Root nodules are formed in the roots of leguminous plants, and these are triggered by a kind of bacterium called the rhizobium. Rhizobium is again a genus of bacteria. There are many different species among that. Depending on the kind of the leguminous plant, there are different species inhabited in the roots of different leguminous plants. And these bacteria can also produce a chemical which has a combination very much similar to that of auxins, and that will trigger cell division in the roots of leguminous plants. As a result, what happens? At some places where the bacteria are inhabited, there the cell division starts, and that result in the formation of many cells in that area. The number of cells are too large that they bulge out, and that bulging out of excess amount of cells at that area is called the root nodules. So actually, it is not compulsory that auxins or these chemicals need to be produced only by plant. It can be produced by even some external factors also. Similarly, gibberellins were first identified by some Japanese scientists, especially in some false seedlings of rice, where they found that some of the rice seedlings were growing very fast, and later all of them they died. They couldn't grow well, and they completely died. So an study into this field has identified that they were also infected by a kind of fungus, and this fungus were producing a chemical similar to gibberellins that would enhance the cell elongation. Once a cell has formed by the auxin production, or in the presence of auxin, gibberellins will help in elongating the cells, mm, lengthening the cells, and because of that, the cells can grow faster, or it can attain maturity faster. Cytokinins are also a chemical that is, along with auxins, helps in branching of the plant, and it promotes cell division. On the other hand, we have the other 2 growth retarders. The first 3 are called the growth promoters, then the other 2 are called the growth retarders, abscisic acid and ethylene. Abscisic acid is normally it inhibits the growth and affects wilting of leaves. These are also one of the important part. Plants normally wilt leaves in two major conditions. Number one, if the leaves are very old and if they are filled with a large amount of waste materials that need to be removed from the plant, then yes, it has to be removed from the plant. So wilting is required. Otherwise, as a part of controlling the physiological activities during winter season, there will be an autumn fall season, and following that season, to escape from very cold climate, plants do the same thing. So during that time also an abscisic acid is formed. Okay, ethylene helps in flowering and ripening of fruits, majorly the ripening of fruit. Okay, so ethylene is a gaseous hormone. Rest all are normally found in liquid state, whereas ethylene is normally found in a gaseous state. That is why in majority of the cases we can find that the fruits start ripening from bottom to top. Okay, that this is mainly because the ripening happens in the presence of this gaseous chemical, and at times it also has been observed that um, the fruits placed together they ripen faster. Or if you want to make another fruit ripen, then you can place one or two already ripened fruit with them, they will ripen faster. Okay, so that is because it's a gaseous hormone released by the ripening fruits. Now, with the help of these chemicals, plants can do many movements. The movements which are related to growth and has got and are influenced by an external stimuli. They are what we call as the tropic movements. Tropic movements are observed in plant, or they are plant movements which are directional. That means either they are observed towards the particular stimuli, or it is found against the particular stimuli. During this last BB1, there was a question related to this topic. That is to draw a diagram and show a positive and negative geotropism. Okay, so many students have done it very well. It was a very simple diagram to, to draw a potted plant, um, horizontally lying, and its roots bending towards the soil, and shoot bending away from soil or upward. So that can result in that will be good enough. The same question was there in one of the previous board exam also, and the marking scheme was there was 1 mark for drawing the diagram and half mark each for labeling it. In some of the papers what I have checked during the PBPB1, many students have drawn the diagram but they have not labeled it, but there were half marks each for labeling the diagram also. So whenever you are drawing a diagram, make sure that you are labeling it well. At least 3 to 4 points must be labeled in that, whatever possible, whatever possible. Do not leave it blank. Do not leave it, completely blank. That the name of the diagram must be there. So these are some of the basic things that you must follow. Okay, then comes one of the stimuli, that is light. If a plant part is showing any movements either towards light or away from light, then we call it as phototropism. Phototropism happens uh, in many plants. For example, the shoot of all plants shows positive phototropism. They try to grow towards light, and the root shows negative phototropism. One of the best example to show this is to keep a potted plant nearer to a window, and then after a few days we can find the plant grows towards light. It moves out of the window and tries to move towards light. This is mainly happening due to unequal production of auxins in the plant. Auxin is affected by the presence of light, and that is in the presence of light, auxin production decreases. That means plants grow faster at night and plants grow slower during daytime. Plants grow faster at night and plants grow slow during daytime. And when you are keeping the plant nearer to a window, only one side of the plant or the stem gains light. So at that particular side, the auxin production decreases, and the opposite side, which is at dark, that side the auxin production increases, and because of that, what happens? The side away from the light expand more than the side is facing the light, and that will result in bending of the stem towards light. Okay, so that is how this happens. Geotropism is another one. The the tropic movement shown towards gravity or away from gravity. Again, this can be experimentally proven by placing a potted plant horizontal. You can see the roots grow downward and the shoot grow upward. The bending of a shoot upward is also due to the unequal distribution of auxin in the stem. When the auxins are produced in the tip and it is flowing down, they are flowing down at a very slow rate, and under gravity, they normally settle down towards the lower side of the stem. And because of that, what happens? The lower side, the growth increases, and the upper side, the growth decreases. So the lower part side of the stem will expand more than the upper side, and because of that, what happens? It bends upward. Okay, so that is how it happens. Chemotropism is another response to chemicals. The only example that we can write is the growth of pollen tube towards the ovule. Once a pollen lands on the stigma and it germinates, the pollen tube should germinate towards the style and enter into the style. That is happening mainly because the ability to identify in which direction is the style. Otherwise, the pollen tube can germinate in any direction. So, but it will germinate towards the stigma and it will enter into the style and will grow towards the ovary. Okay, hydrotropism is the movement of plants in response to water. And if it is moving towards water, then we call it as positive hydrotropism. Away from water, then it is negative hydrotropism. Apart from this, there are one or two more terminologies like thermotropism. Thermotropism means for touch, for temperature. Yes, this is phototropism and geotropism. Yes. On the lower picture here, you can see about tendrils. This is thigmotropism. This is called thigmotropism. The tendrils of a growing climber, when it comes in touch with a solid support, it twists around it. In which direction should it twist depends on when what direction does it get the touch. Touch can stop the auxin production. So when they are getting a touch on any one side, the auxin production stops there, and on the opposite side, the auxin production increases or it continues as it is. And because of that, the part of the stem which is or the tendril which is touching the support, that part will not grow much. The other part, opposite part, will grow much, and that will bend the tendril or the stem around the support. Whether it will be a clockwise bending or anti-clockwise bending depends on the touch. So this is called thigmotropism. This is chemotropism, the movement of pollen tube towards the style. Then then comes the nastic movements. Yes, the nastic movements are those movements which are the movements are happening, but the direction of the stimuli is not a question. It is non-directional movement. It is neither towards the stimuli or nor it is away from the stimuli. So that is what we call as the nastic movements. Here also light can be one of the factor. For example, the blooming of flowers is photonastism. Photonastism. Why photonastism? Because early in the morning flowers bloom when the sun rises. So they can detect the presence of light, but in which direction is the light coming, that has no effect on the blooming of the flowers. All the flowers bloom. irrespective of in whatever direction they are arranged on the plant. So that is called photonastism. Then we have here another example, thigmonastism. Thigmonastism, one of the best example is the touch me not plant or Mimosa pudica. Okay, this plant has a special ability. It has got a special gland-like structure at the leaf base, and when a touch is experienced by in the leaves or any part of the plant, the water which is present in the leaf or the xylem in the leaf veins, they are withdrawn to the small gland-like structure, and that will result in low turgor pressure, the low water pressure in the leaves, and because of that the leaves will close and fall down. Okay, that is how this happens in mimosa. And we can see the moment it get a touch, it travels through the bud. There was a question related to this in one of the paper, um, whether this is a chemical process or a neurochemical process. So this involves, because wherever there is a an exchange of um, messages are involved in plants or in animals or in any living cells, there is some exchange of charges also. So any option that will trigger you to electrochemical or neurochemical, so both the things are involved. Yes, obviously they don't have the nervous system to say neurochemical, but obviously there are positive and negative ion exchange. So go for an option which will have electrical and chemical signalings are used in this. Okay, it's not only simply movement of water, but why should the water move or in which direction should it move, that is actually controlled by some ion exchange systems, and because of that some positive and negative ions are involved. So electrical as well as chemical processes are happening in this. Okay, so you opt for any option that shows both of them. This is another thigmotropism, where the leaves of a Venus flytrap closes after touching the triggers inside it. Okay, so this is thigmotropism. These plants are very commonly known. This is one of the example for thermotropism. Thermonasty, sorry. This is the previous one is not thigmotropism, it is thigmonasty. Thigmonasty. This is also thigmonasty. This is also thigmonasty. We are studying about nastism. And this is thermonasty. Thermonasty means these plants are called office time. Normally, it does not bloom early in the morning. They bloom a little late, maybe around 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. And the reason is that these plants need a little higher temperature. So once the mornings become a little warmer, then only these plants normally bloom. Okay, so they are with another example for office time plant. This name of this plant is office time plant. This is another example of thermonasty. Tulips are also showing thermonasty. Okay, so these are some of the descriptions about tropism and nastism in plants. Then coming to human endocrine system. Yes, the human endocrine system is another way of controlling the human body. We have already learned about how the nervous system is controlling the human body. Now we have the human endocrine system. Human endocrine system has been explained in detail. One by one, the glands has been explained in the textbook, and the function, the locations, the secretions, and the function of glands. These three things are essential in this. An endocrine system is made up of endocrine glands. Endocrine glands are the ductless glands. They are situated at different parts of the body, and they keep on producing some chemicals, and their secretions are normally poured into the bloodstream. Blood carries them throughout the body, and only it will be effective in the area where they are supposed to show the effect. So we call the area of production as the place where the hormones are produced, or the source of the hormone, and the place where they are affecting are called the target organs. They may not be very near to one another, they can be very far from one another. The target organ and the producing site, they may be far away from one another. A gland which is situated in the brain can have an effect on another gland which is situated on the kidneys or in the abdominal cavity. Okay, so they are far, they can be far away from one another. The glands which are having a duct or a tube and are located very nearer to its action site, they are called as the exocrine glands. And they normally produce enzymes and they are normally associated with the digestive system. For example, salivary glands are exocrine glands. Liver is acting as an exocrine gland. Pancreas is both exocrine and endocrine gland. Okay, so gastric glands are exocrine glands. They are present in the place where they are required. So there are many such glands which are actually exocrine glands. Here in this one, we are studying about the endocrine glands, which are far away from their target site, and their secretions are normally distributed through blood, and they will have some effect on the body. Okay, let's see what are the major endocrine glands. The endocrine glands, the major endocrine glands are the pituitary gland. We have another gland called the pineal gland, which are actually almost there are confusions regarding the role of pineal gland. So we start studying from the pituitary gland onwards. Hypothalamus is a place in the brain which is interconnecting the thalamus and the pituitary. It's a small region between thalamus and the pituitary. And this area is known to have some effect on the pituitary gland. They produce releasing hormone, and under the influence of releasing hormone, the pituitary gland produce growth hormone. So hypothalamus produces this thing, though it is not a gland, but it do have the ability to produce some chemicals which can trigger the production of pituitary gland. Okay, but pituitary gland is a small region present in the brain, and it will have, it's a very small region, about 1.5 centimeters or so only, but it has got two lobes. The one is the anterior lobe and the posterior lobe, which is normally called as anterior pituitary and the posterior pituitary. Both of them together produces around 6 different hormones, and they affect different parts of the body. And because of this, the pituitary gland affect many other glands, or they control many other glands. They are also called as, pituitary gland is also called as the master gland. There was an assertion recent question this time that or some, I think one of the question was there, why is pituitary gland called as the master gland? In some of the answers, no, it was not an assertion, I think direct question. Yes, in some of the papers, what I have seen is that students have started writing that pituitary gland is called master gland because it produces growth hormone. No, it's not because it produces growth hormone. It is because it can control many other glands in the body. Okay, it can control many other glands in the body. For example, it produces another hormone called the TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. Under the influence of that, the thyroid gland will work. It can produce FSH, follicle stimulating hormone. Right, under the influence of that, the follicles, it will have an effect on the ovaries and the testicles. Okay, so there are many such hormones or many such glands which are under the control of pituitary. That is why it is called as the master gland. So pituitary produces many glands, many hormones. One of the major hormone is the growth hormone, and it has been explained well in the textbook. So we are expecting at least one question from this portion. When it comes to the endocrine system, the most probable question will be from the growth hormone and its effects. If a person's body produces excess amount of growth hormone, then that will result in overgrowth of the body. Improper and overgrowth of the body, and it increases the height of the person too much. Sometimes it can distort the balance or the proportions between the length of the torso and the hands and legs also, but mostly it does not create much problem, but it can result in a condition called gigantism. At the same time, if it is produced in very small quantity, then it can result in a condition called dwarfism. In both the conditions, only physically their physical appearance is different. Other than that, they mostly do not have much difficulty in their normal life or in any other activities. A person who is a dwarf will be very short heighted, maybe around less than 4 feet in height, and a person having gigantism will be very tall, maybe above 6.57 feet tall. Okay, they will have their own problems associated with that. Other than that, bodily they are absolutely normal. Yes. Pituitary gland also produces another hormone TSH, that is thyroid stimulating hormone, that will trigger thyroid gland. FSH, that triggers the ovary. LH again, that is producing luteinizing hormone. Yes. Then it also produces oxytocin, melatonin. Uh, then it also produces ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone, ADH, antidiuretic hormone, which is also called as vasopressin. Okay, we studied with that in excretion topic, that it will have an effect on the kidneys in the absorption of osmoregulation. That means absorption of water and retention of water in the body. Yes, it will have an effect on that. So there are many such hormones which are actually produced by the pituitary gland. Okay, so it's a very small gland, but at the same time very effective. The next gland is thyroid gland. Thyroid gland is situated in the throat region, and its major secretion is thyroxine. Thyroxine is the major secretion. The major function of thyroid gland is controlling the metabolism. That means general growth processes. We can say the general growth processes. You should use the word carbohydrate and fat metabolism. Why carbohydrate and fat metabolism? Because they are the one that are used in the largest quantity for energy production. For growth, energy is required, and that energy is released as a result of breaking down of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. So, how much amount of carbohydrates should be broken down, or fat should be broken down, or whether carbohydrates should be taken, or when should the fats should be broken down, or should the body depend on the proteins? Which chemical reactions to be done in how much quantity, where all, right? These kinds of decisions are taken based on the presence of thyroxine. And for the proper production of thyroxine, one of the element which is required is iodine. If iodine is very less in quantity, then it will affect the thyroxine production, and that indirectly can affect the overall growth of the person. If it happens in younger ages, yes, it will affect the bodily growth, it will affect the mental growth, the brain development. These kinds of things can be affected. But if it happens at a later stage where the body and the brain has already been developed, it can result in another stage called the goiter. Goiter is a disease caused due to the deficiency of iodine. That is why it has been advised to use iodized salt, because iodine is not found in majority of the food items. So it is very difficult to get iodine. Potassium iodide. We consume iodine in the form of potassium iodide. So the salt that we are using is a mixture of sodium chloride and potassium iodide in small quantity. Okay, both of them are salty to taste, so it doesn't affect the taste much, but we get iodine also. So thyroid gland is situated in the throat. It has got two parts in our body. One is called the parathyroid and thyroid. Parathyroid is active only up to the age of 12 years. Beyond 12 years, parathyroid becomes useless, and the thyroid gland takes the place of that. Okay. The secretion from the parathyroid is called the parathormone, and from the thyroid is called the thyroxine. Apart from this, it also produces another hormone, calcitonin. Okay. Yes. Then we have another gland in the abdominal region, and that is The pancreas. Pancreas is considered as a dual gland because it acts both as exocrine as well as endocrine. That is why it is called as a dual gland. Parathyroid, the pancreas. But when we are studying about the human endocrine system, we consider the beta cells or the islets of Langerhans, the part of the pancreas which is known as the islets of Langerhans. That region has been considered as an exocrine gland. Okay, whereas alpha cells are considered as an exocrine gland. They produce the pancreatic juice, which helps in protein digestion in the digestive system. Okay, pancreas produces two major hormones. One is this thing insulin. Insulin converts carbohydrates to fat. When the amount of glucose in the blood increases, insulin production happens, and that insulin converts glucose into glycogen. Glycogen is a fat. The glucose to glycogen conversion happens, and the glycogen gets stored in muscle cells. Okay, so body has the ability to convert excess amount of carbohydrate into fat. That means glucose is a carbohydrate, and when the glucose level increases in the body, it gets converted into glycogen. Glycogen is a fat. At the same time, there is another hormone produced by the same gland, and that is glucagon. Glucagon is another hormone produced by pancreas. Whenever required, the glucagon converts back the glycogen into glucose. If the amount of glucose in the body decreases or it falls below a certain level, then the glycogen will be converted back into glucose by the hormone glucagon. Okay, so they act opposite one another. If a person's body is unable to produce adequate quantity of insulin, then that result in a disease called diabetes. There are two different types of diabetes. One is the diabetes insipidus or diabetes type 1, and that is not caused due to insulin. That is caused due to the inability of pituitary gland to produce ADH, antidiuretic hormone, or vasopressin. When the pituitary gland is unable to produce vasopressin, and then these people will have excess amount of urination, and this can happen normally by birth. Okay, excess amount of urination, uncontrolled urination can happen. So that condition is called diabetes insipidus or diabetes type 1. But the most of the cases of diabetes that we are seeing around, especially in older people, or I am saying I am not audible. Shanvi, can you tell me whether I am audible or not? Better. My system volume is high. Microphone. Hello. Okay. My system volumes are fine. Okay. Yes, I was talking about the second case where the insulin production decreases, and that result in another kind of diabetes, diabetes mellitus. It is called diabetes mellitus, or what we call as the type 2 diabetes. Okay. When a person is suffering from diabetes mellitus or the absence of insulin, that means that the islets of Langerhans of that person is not working properly. This may be possible. It is also possible that at that same time the person's body may not be even producing glucagon also. That means their conversion from glycogen to glucose are also affected. But it is not troubling us in our daily life. Why? Because whenever the person's body does not have adequate amount of glucose, we can intake glucose from outside, or we can eat some extra food and can maintain that level. So there are two problems associated with diabetes or the malfunctioning of the insulin gland, the pancreas. One, if the amount of glucose level increases in the blood, their body is unable to decrease the level. This is problem number one. And because of this, it can create many other problems. There are many diabetes linked problems associated with that. That is why we need to go for medication. The second problem is if their body does not have adequate glucose in their body, then the body cannot increase the amount also. But for this, we don't go for any medication. We can have excess amount of food. Second thing is, next gland is the adrenal gland. Adrenal gland is situated above the kidneys, and adrenal gland produces two major hormones. One is adrenaline and noradrenaline. Adrenaline helps the body or prepares the body for fight and flight. There was a question related to this topic. Adrenaline will affect your heart, your lungs, and your muscles. Three different organs at the same time. It will increase the heartbeat, it will increase the breathing rate, and it will prepare your muscles for sudden contractions and expansions. So one hormone which affects three different organs. Okay, so this was there in one of the question. Okay, name the endocrine gland that affects three different organs at the same time. Okay, so adrenaline is, or adrenal gland is one of the examples. Adrenaline as well as noradrenaline, they are very good neurotransmitters also. So they are produced in smaller quantity almost all the time in the body. Adrenaline and noradrenaline. Gender specific hormones, ovaries in female and testicles in male, they produce different hormones. Ovaries can produce two different hormones, estrogen and progesterone. They are produced in ovaries. It depends on the ovarian cycle. For the first half or the first 14 days, when the follicles are converting into ovum, the ovaries produce estrogen. And in the second half, after the ovulation, another 14 days, the ovaries produce progesterone. Progesterone will have an influence on the internal walls of uterus, that is endometrium. And under the influence of progesterone, the endometrium thickens and it becomes highly vascularized and will become softer and will be ready for receiving a possible embryo. Okay, whereas when the exchange of this hormone, or when the change in the hormone level happens in our body, that can result in the menstrual cycle. Does testes produce only one hormone, that is testosterone, and its production normally remains constant throughout the lifetime. And once it starts producing in the teenage, it continues its production throughout. There is no much change in its quantity. And testosterone is responsible for the secondary sexual characters in male, and estrogen is responsible for the secondary sexual characters in female. Okay, so these are the major hormones produced in the body. So that brings to an end of this endocrine system. If you have any doubts